welcome to Music with Purpose. My name is Ed McCarver, kind of guest hosting tonight, and for me it will be an absolute pleasure because we're actually going to be interviewing some musical legends. Now, just to give a little history on this, group has been together for over 5 decades. Please welcome the legendary Tommy in the Rivieras, Tommy Jeanette, Mark Fisk, and Kevin Templeton. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Just a little bit about the history of the group. You've been together, as we mentioned, over 5 decades. But tell us how the group got together originally.
Well, I started the group actually in 1963. We went out as a band in 1964, and then from there it just mushroomed. We changed personnel quite a bit because, you know, it was an experimentation thing we were doing, and we changed our style a lot. We would become a horn band playing blue-eyed soul, and then we revert back to a 5-piece group and do 5-piece group type of music. But it ballooned, and it ballooned. I've been in every state in the country. We've been on TV several times. We basically were. I personally have worked with over 175 acts. All the concert halls here in New Haven, the old New Haven Arena before they built the Coliseum, the Bushnell up in Hartford.
The legendary Oakdale
right.
Theater.
Well, actually, yeah. So we worked the old New Haven Arena. We worked the Bushnell in Hartford. That was my goal, was to work those 3 rooms. And we worked with a lot of acts in those 3 rooms. And like I say, I've worked with over 150 acts through my career on stage. And it just all came together. We came at a good time because the 60s were a time of, you know, it wasn't the wild 60s like it, you know, with the protests and whatnot. It was the musical 60s. And everybody, there were so many good bands out there that, as a matter of fact, there was a book written about the New Haven sound, and most of them were listed in there, and they were great. And we all were friends. We used to switch players. We'd switch gigs. We'd cover for other bands. I mean, you know, the Shags and all the groups. You know, we'd cover. We were just all friends, and it was a lot of fun.
Now, Mark, how did you get involved in the group? Were you there right in the early years, the early 60s?
No. When he started, I was 8 years old. I got into the band in, I'm going to say 84, prior to, I'm going to say 84, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I got into the band in 84. Was with local bands, and this gentleman took me from the local band scene to the Arthur Ashe Civic Center in the course of 6 months. Which I am very grateful for. And what was your question again?
Just how you got started, and which you did answer. So.
Well, yeah, we did. I did a lot of recording in New York with Mark Berry, who was Carly Simon's co-producer, and that didn't go anywhere. And had a couple of tribute bands going, and made some money for a while. And then I met the real deal, and since '85. Or 84, I've been doing this.
And Kevin, you are currently the drummer for the band. Tell us how you got involved with the Rivieras.
I met Mark Fisk through a mutual friend in 2003, and we've been gigging off and on since then.
Now, how did the name Tommy in the Rivieras come? Was that your brainchild? Or
yeah. Well, actually, truth to tell, we had this female singer, and we were originally the Ascots. And, you know, that was kind of a lame name. But, you know, it's the best we could come up with at the time. And we worked under the name Ascots because back in those days they had the teenage nightclubs, which are dead and buried now. But there was a lot of them. There was Dante's Inferno in East Haven, locally I mean. There was the one in Plantsville, which was the Rumpus Room. And there's 3 or 4 more. But the thing is that it was really a good idea. They were going to basically bring in acts, and they would sell soda and chips and put a cover on the door. Matter of fact, the first star I ever worked with was 2:45. Was there I go again.
Gary U.S. Bonds.
Gary U.S.
Bonds.
Bonds. I'm telling you, this is starting to bother me because I do seminars in schools, and this is not good. But yeah, the first act I worked with was Gary U.S. Bonds and Little Anthony and the Imperials. So they were bringing in some good acts. But then came the idiots that came in and started to bring the grass into the clubs, and started to bring liquor into the clubs, and then finally they were having fights, and they just closed everything down, which was a shame because it was a nice thing for the kids, but they're always the bad kids spoil it.
We're talking with Tommy Jeanette, Mark Fisk, and Kevin Templeton of Tommy and the Rivieras, legendary band that's been performing for almost as long as most of us have been alive here. Musical influences when you were growing up, and anybody that kind of steered you into the current career you're in now? Well,
actually, I had the pleasure of working with a lot of different people over the years, and the people that came in with their idea of music, and so we collaborated on a lot of things. In the very, very beginning, the Beatles, were the big thing. So we did Beatles music, and we did Dave Clark, and that type of thing. So we followed that trend, but we also were playing basic rock and roll. We were a 5-6-piece group at the time. And then when we added horns, I had a guy with me almost from the beginning, Tony Vespoli, who now is out in the Midwest, and he stayed with me for 11 years. And he was my music arranger, and he was always thought outside the box, and we always did a show rather than just play music. We always had the blocks of music put together, and we could basically go into a club that wanted blue-eyed soul, or we could go into a club that wanted rock and roll, or a mixture of both, because we had everything down. And as I went along and more people came in the band, I learned more different styles, and I learned how to present. We did a lot of comedy, and so we tried to make everybody feel good about being there. It wasn't just okay, you can dance now. It wasn't like that. I was very disappointed if at the end of the night we didn't have them screaming and hopping up and down in front of us.
For those that might not be familiar with the definition, what is blue-eyed soul?
Blue-eyed soul was black. It was basically black music that was that came out of the blues from New Orleans. But then when the Temptations came in, who we worked with, and the Four Tops, who we worked with, and a lot of that rubbed off on me because we did their shows. And, as a matter of fact, the funny thing about it is I play bass. And I always, played bass like this when I first got the bass. And the Soundtrack, which was a club here in New Haven back in the day, we would sit in over there, and they'd always have black trios, and these guys were excellent musicians. And the bass player for the group, I sat in and played. He said, "Man, why are you playing the bass up here?" I said, "I don't know. Aren't you supposed to?" And he said, "Is your left arm tired, bro? Is it tired?" I said, "Yeah, it is tired." He said, "Well then, don't wear it up there. Wear it down here." And then I looked at him. He's playing the bass. But this guy was big. He was like about 6'4", 6'5". He said to me, he said, "Now, I'm going to give you one of my straps, man, because you're cool." So he gave me one of his straps, and he did it so that my hand just hit the strings of the bass. He said, "Now you play that for an hour. You tell me how you feel." At the end of the hour, he said, "How you feel?" I said, "I feel great. I'm not tired at all." And I said to him, I said, "Hey, man, you changed my life. Thanks." And I never got the guy's name. Everybody just called him G. So I said, "You're the man, G. Thank you." I always played the bass down there after that.
And Mark and Kevin, I wanted to ask you, as I asked Tommy, what influenced you to become a musician back in the early
Absolutely,
days?
the Beatles. I was listening. I had an older brother, a few years older than I, and listening to a lot of Beach Boys, a lot of harmony groups, and I started singing when I was 6. My first show was in first grade. I did a concert. But anyway, I really enjoyed the harmonies and just vocalizing. That's where we stand today, pretty much. Beatles were that's what I want to do. That's where I'm going. Okay, and that's exactly how it happened. Before that, I did have a Ricky Nelson guitar. Yeah.
And Kevin, you are a drummer. Was it?
I
drumming?
sing and I play the drums. European orchestral music, American jazz, various eras of which, American rock and roll, American soul, and a lot of British rock, starting with the Beatles.
Now, I'm doing research for this. Your biography page refers to your group as a nostalgia act.
Right.
And also a tribute band. We talked a little bit about tribute bands before. And I know, Mark, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about tribute bands. Is that a good handle to have in 2017?
Yeah, it's a great handle to have in 2017. We actually, back about 1970, 71, we were on the road for like 11, 12 years without coming home. And the one thing that we found that always worked for us were the oldie shows. And what we would do is we would, when we were on the road, we wear tuxes and, dress elegantly, whatever. But then when we did the oldie show, we just, take everything off, grease back our hair, put on, the biker pants and the whole 9 yards, and become an oldie show. And people just went bananas over that because we went from one type of group to the other. So we went from Black Blue-Eyed Soul all of a sudden to Little Richard screaming about Molly. And it worked so well that to this day, we still do oldie shows as a regular part of the diet.
And they're very well received.
Always.
Yes. To this day. Yes. Mark, you wanted to say something about tribute bands?
Yeah, when I took the baton, when Tom passed,
Do a little bit more than passed.
Yeah. Sorry there, buddy.
Yeah, I'm still here.
He's right here. We decided, and what we did mostly was, the focal point was doing the music of the bands that Tommy had and I had worked with over the years. And that still stands today. So we do a lot of Beach Boys, we do the Doors, we do the Animals. As a matter of fact, up until 4 or 5 years ago, one of the Animals, Dana Place, who was the bassist for the Animals 2 tour, was a bassist of ours. So we do a lot of that. We do Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons, Dion, and right now we're going anywhere from 1955 with a Chuck Berry medley to Nights in White Satin by the Moody Blues. It depends on, we're getting to the point now that we can really fit in any venue. And we try to do the music to the best of our ability to make it sound as authentic as the original artist.
You're dropping names here that even a casual musical fan would know, and you've performed with many legends, Beach Boys, Chuck Berry, Tom Jones, Wallingford's own Hilton Valentine, and the Animals. I wanted to ask each of you, is there one performance with any of these musical legends that stands out as a personal favorite?
Each one of them was special in their own way. Most of them were very, very cool people. Like we worked with the Coasters and the Drifters, I don't know how many times, but hundreds of times. And I got to be very, very close to Carl Gardner, who was the head of the Coasters. And we would just, when we were doing clubs, of course they'd always let me sit in on bass, which I liked. And Danny and the Juniors, I'd always sit in on bass. So a lot of the acts we worked with, they let me get up there because it saved them money and they didn't have to pay the band. But anyway, Carl was, every time we did a show, we would go over to the bar. We did go over to the bar quite a bit. We'd go over to the bar and we'd have a drink and discuss the show. And he would always tell me, he'd say, "Brother, you got to come on the road with me all the time, man." And I said, "I can't do that, man. I'm the head of the band. I'm making the money." No. He said, "That's right. You're still cool." And I just made so many friendships, by working with these guys so often, that each one had a little idiosyncrasy thing about them that made me like them. There's only 2 people I ever had a problem with in the 25 years I was in the business. One was Dennis Wilson from the Beach Boys, because he did a bad thing. He got me a little upset. And the kid that played guitar for the Outsiders, Time Won't Let Me, because we did the Dick Clark Cavalcade of Stars show up at the Bushnell with him and Tom Jones and some of the people you're talking about. And but outside of that, everybody was beautiful.
Yeah.
I think it's almost like being an entertainer in a band is like a special club. You can't join the club until you actually do it. But once you do it, they accept you just like you were a brother from birth.
And Mark, is there one performance, and Kevin, I'll get to you next, one performance in your career with the Rivieras that stands
I'm going to
out?
have to say it was the Van Wezel Performing Arts Center towards the end of the Comets tour. That was an amazing concert. It was-
5,000 seater, we filled it.
Yeah, and that was, and with incredible response from the people. So getting back to the tribute cover band type of thing, I think we're a step above the cover band type of thing because we're doing the music of the bands that we've worked with, for one thing, and we don't just do one band, and bless the bands that are out there making money doing that. Like the Led Zeppelin clone bands and all those bands. There's now the Creedence Clearwater Revival clone band, and God bless them, and they're doing well. But we run the whole gambit, you know. So we do basically everything through the '60s, a little bit of the '50s, and a little bit of into the '70s. So you're actually seeing more than just seeing one show.
Yeah, and without the costumes, we're not really.
Yeah.
We'd like to dress well.
Well, you
and
dress
such.
up as a clown once in a while, but
He wears that all the time.
It's my default position. I've enjoyed the benefits that we've done since I've met Mark. the
Okay.
most. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. You've been around, you've said, you mentioned Danny and the Juniors, Gary U.S. Bonds, all the way up to other bands.
Mhm.
When people talk about the greatest generation or the greatest decade in music, do you have a preference? I mean, you seem to have done it all in your 50-plus years in the business.
You know, again, you can't just define it by a single person or a single event or a single type of music. It encompasses a brother and sisterhood. Once you perform, and you perform well. For instance, one of the biggest names to come out of New Haven back in the early '60s was Jonas Vesey. He was originally with Roger Koob, who had many records, with the Premiers. And he's a very good friend of mine. But he just recently got into the Entertainers Hall of Fame in Vegas. The guy is that good. And you'll see him on Facebook all the time. He sits down to earth. I love the guy. And even though we never actually played together in the same group, we've been best friends for 40 years. So, it's...
Mark, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mark, greatest generation, greatest decade? Is
absolutely the '60s. I grew up with it, and it's all in my head. People ask me sometimes, "Hey, you want to listen to the radio?" I said, "No, it's right here. I don't need it." Absolutely the '60s, and the whole gambit of the '60s, from the early Beach Boys harmonies right up to Morrison and that era, the Woodstock era, I like to call it. The whole gambit, the whole thing.
And Kevin?
For rock and pop, for me, I'd say the '60s and the '70s. But there's been a lot of great music written in the last 500 years.
Yeah.
Again, we're talking with Tommy Jeanette, Mark Fisk, and Kevin Templeton of the legendary Tommy and the Rivieras Band. When you have downtime, when you want to relax, and you want to put on some music or anything, will you listen to anything currently, or is there another musical genre that you like?
For me, no. We do a lot of recording too. We're coming out with an album hopefully in the spring, Riviera Studios, and we're in the studio doing a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of stuff to catch up on. And
but when you relax after a tough day, you get back to the hotel room or back to the apartment. And
are you talking about being on the road or just in everyday life?
Everyday life, when you want to relax, do you put on Ella Fitzgerald or something?
No, not really. You know, to tell you the truth, I really don't listen to music when I'm home relaxing.
Because it's so involved.
I do it every day in some form or another, whether it be recording or practice with these guys or whatever. I just kind of like to settle down and just lay low.
And Kevin, and I'll get to you last.
Oh, no,
because I know you
listen.
have. Kevin,
I listen to a lot of different stuff with the limited free time that I have. I also try to write songs.
do you guys like today's stuff, by the way?
It's like it's always ever been. Some's good, some's bad. Some you like, some you don't. But the idea is that if you keep progressing and you keep coming out with new sounds or new techniques or whatever the case may be, hey, God bless them. The kids today are probably as good, if not better, than we were back in the day. But it just keeps changing. It's like a rolling ball. Keeps on going down the hill.
And sometimes it seems to circle around and for a little while go back to the 60s again. Right?
Then I knew you were drinking when that happened.
Recycle your bottles.
That's right, that's right.
Are you a fan of social media? Is Facebook and YouTube and the other?
Well, because I'm not a tech guy, I'm a computer illiterate, but I am on Facebook. And obviously, all of my friends are musicians on Facebook, because a lot of them worked with me over the years. But no, I tend to listen to politics. I hate to admit that, but I do.
Okay. We have less than 2 minutes, and I want to make this, and I'll give 30 seconds. Or do you want to go? Is there something you want to mention?
No, I just want to, if you guys, if you people out there in TV land, the name of our band site itself is Tommy and the Rivieras, all small case, one word, .bandzoogle, BANDZOOGLE.com. We've got some video footage on that and a complete history of the band. And if we've only got 2 minutes left, the history of the band, Messing with the Kid was Tommy's hit. Detroit City, Do I Love You went way up there. All great songs. For 30 years. He was with Gary U.S. Bonds at one time. Kevin Templeton, at an early age, was with Bill Haley's Comets, who we missed probably with Tommy Oliveira sitting back there probably by a couple of weeks. We have a new bass player, Greg Allen, who has worked with the original Crickets, Mountain. The list goes on and on with him. I mean, a list this long. Incredible.
I want to give it 30 seconds each.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And our last thing is my guitarist, who took Pete Nesmith's place in the Monkees when Pete Nesmith left, and for the last 14 years before he died, he was working as Davy Jones' guitar player.
That's Dave Robichaux.
Dave Robichaux is his name. Phenomenal guitar player. And so we have a good mix. We've got strong 5-part harmonies, and doing some Motown, doing some surf, doing some Beach Boys, and hope to see you out there.
Best advice you can give somebody who wants to get in, wants to be the next Tommy Jeanette, Mark Fisk, and Kevin Templeton.
Just do your thing, and don't listen to anybody that is good, bad, or indifferent. If you like it, you stay with it, and you just try harder. And if you stumble, you get up and walk again, and stumble again and walk up. One of these days, you're gonna walk up on your feet, and you'll be fine.
Good advice. You have to stay with it. You're not going to become a star overnight. Very few do. But if you can get into a groove with you or whoever you're working with and create a sound that you think is going to be pleasing to the audience, then go for it and stick with it and push for it.
I agree with Tom.
Gentlemen, this has been an absolute pleasure. It was nice strolling down the road, and you've brought up a lot of names that I'm sure a lot of audience members will. Thank you. It's been a privilege.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. This has been Music with a Purpose.